Welcome to the Unscripted SEO interview podcast. Yes, it's 100% unscripted, 100% unrehearsed, 100% unedited, and 100% real. I'm your host, Mark A. Preston. And, well, I'm not going to tell you who my guest is today because I don't want to do them any injustice. So I'd like my guest today to introduce themselves. Hello.
Hey, I'm Jen Boland, and I am the founder of Satisfyly. I left my role at an agency almost a year ago, at the end of the month, and launched Satisfyly over the late summer. And really, it's all about content satisfaction and content measurement, hence the name Satisfyly.
Wonderful. Now, for the people watching this or listening to this that doesn't really know who you are, could you give us like a whirlwind tour of when it was you started in the industry and what's happened between then and now, please?
Yeah. Oh, it's really funny because somebody on Twitter just asked, what was the very first website you designed? And I am so thankful I took this class in college. It was quote unquote gut. It was my fourth year. And, I was all about partying and doing as little work as possible. Um, and maybe not the best idea in hindsight, but I took this class and the last module was learning how to build a website. And this was 1996. And having had that, just like, here's a notepad, here's just how to structure HTML, here's how to FTP something up to the web. Just being introduced to those very basic things put me in the right place where I needed to be to grow as the web flourished around us, right? Like, if I don't think that if I'd not had that, I'm not sure that my career would have been where it is today. So that's kind of how I got started. I worked on the Hill initially in my career, and I actually built websites for the members of Congress that I worked for. Got an award for one of them. And when I think about it, from day one, I've always thought about the web, and I've always thought about it from a user satisfaction, user experience. And also, I'm a little bit lazy. That is the reality. So when I was working on the Hill, this is kind of how I got into web development per se, was I was so tired of entering in these basic flag and constituent requests that I was like, what if we put a form on the website? It sounds so simple. And then believe it or not, there was even this random way to hook it into the CRM and send the data straight to where it needed to be. And really, that was how I got into the web and how I started thinking about making websites for people to be usable. And again, this was all back in 1997. Went on to do a bunch of things, created a failed business in the wellness industry. Definitely made me timid to go back out on my own again. But after 12 years at an agency, these ideas were calling in my brain, and I couldn't shut them down anymore. So I took a leap of faith last year, and I left, and it's been the best thing that I have ever done. I have a successful little consulting business where I'm doing analytics and SEO work, while bootstrapping Satisfyly, the content measurement side of my business, building these tools to help people truly be able to measure their content.
That's an amazing story. It really is. Now, content measurement.
Yes.
Could you tell us what content measurement actually is and how you go about it?
Yeah. Well, it is really funny. You're gonna laugh. Last night, I was searching for this document in my Google Drive, and I stumbled on this thing that I called the content report card. And I was working with this client, and we had just done this major analytics implementation for them. And then he really came to me and he said, Jen, how do I actually know if my content is effective? Because, he was actually the IT guy, but, he was thinking beyond just IT. And he'd also spent, I think, $40,000 on this, like, 20 different subdomain web analytics integration that we did for them. And he's like, well, how do I know if this is even effective? And that was the moment that I realized we needed to figure out how to measure content. So my first foray of this was this content report card. And I'm actually looking at it because I found this document from 2017. So this was 6 years ago. I started thinking about this problem. And, obviously page views, a small piece of it, right? We have to know, is it even getting in front of an audience? Looking at, bounce rate or even quick backs. That's something I've started implementing in people's Google Analytics accounts so you can see if they're quickly going back. But ultimately, in my mind, content measurement comes down to two things. And this was influenced by Ari Holland. He is the inventor of the core model. I don't know if you've heard of him. I think he's from Norway. I always get the Scandinavian countries mixed up, and I apologize. But he has this idea, right, that every single piece of content needs to meet user needs and needs to meet organizational needs. And really, to me, that is at the core of every single piece of content. And so the very first thing I did was I developed this widget that just collects user feedback. I know you can pay for Hotjar, you can pay for other tools out there, but then your data is stuck in this third-party tool. So I created something that could push the data right into Google Analytics because I was tired of having to then go mash the data every month or every time I wanted to run a report. So user satisfaction data, number one. Number two is what I call assisted conversions. And again, this is where Google Analytics is actually a pretty good tool, but it allows you to tell, did the person who look at this page do the thing that you wanted them to do? Now, I know with cookies and stuff, it's not a perfect measurement, but at least if we can get some data, some correlation that people who are looking at this page are then doing X, Y, and Z, that can give us some insight into the organizational effectiveness of the content. And then this is also influenced by the core model is people create content all the time, and then they don't think about how people are going to get to it. That's the biggest issue that I see over and over again. So again, having an easy way to be able to see where did people come from, whether it was from another internal page, or did they come from social? Did they come direct? Did they come from search? But really thinking deeply, how am I spent time creating this piece of content. There was a study done, I think Carrie Hayne actually wrote a tweet about this a while ago, but it costs like $5,000 to create a piece of content. And I mean, I'm not talking about like your one-off blogger, but I'm talking for major organizations, right? By the time you've researched, you've written it, it's gone through any kind of approval, it's been put on the web and published, you're looking at like $5,000 in people time. Yet nobody is thinking about the big picture of like, is this truly satisfying? Is this meeting the organizational needs? And they're not even looking at the content after they produce it, other than maybe page views, if that. So content measurement is just, in my mind, is like getting it in front of people, making sure that the content is meeting the user's needs, and then also making sure that that content is meeting your organizational needs.
Yeah, totally agree there. Now, a little story. I did a 2-day training gig with a global company, and they flew all the heads of marketing from all around the world for this 2-day training event. And what you've described there, they were creating stuff. But I said, well, what's the measurement? What's it doing? Well, we don't know. And you laugh at this, the biggest light bulb moment for them with something simple like Google Trends.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think that sometimes, especially in the SEO industry, people you just look at numbers and they don't think about how it all links together. So from your experience, how do you think SEO should think about content?
I mean, I think right now, because so much, we'll just call it garbage, is being created by AI, I just think that we have to think more deeply about what people need from content. Right now, I'm working with a major health organization, and I've been working with them for like 4 years, and I helped them go from almost nothing in SEO to ranking with the big guys, but we've been stuck. And I think it's for a lot of reasons. One, Google is, I think some of the bigger brands, they're pushing them a little harder, and they've dropped from number 1 to number 2 on a lot of keywords. But the other thing is that their content is essentially sterile. And I told them to create this very long form, thorough, sterile, skyscraper content, because that is what was working for a very long time. But now with the advent of LLMs, right, regurgitation is easy. Like I could spin up a pretty darn good article, to be honest. Maybe it's not good, but like a thorough covering a topic article in an hour or so with AI, not even just having it do it, even like giving it like good prompts and good help. But what value is that offering? And so I think we have to take a step back and have to accept that we're all going to probably be getting less search traffic in the next couple of years. And what we need to be doing instead is making sure that we're connecting with people, because people are looking for a solution to a problem when they search. They're not looking for content. Maybe they're looking to be entertained. And I'm not in the entertainment business. I work with a lot of associations and nonprofits. So they're definitely looking, like associations are looking to help their staff, not their staff, but the professional members that are part of the association. My health clients, they're looking to help people who probably have been recently diagnosed or think they may have a disease. And the reality is you can get the basics, and sometimes you don't even need to go beyond the search result page because Google's pulling so much into the knowledge graph. So instead, you need to be figuring out, how actually do I connect with people? How do I build that bond? How do I build that brand? And that's where I think we all need to be going with SEO. So we need to sort of look beyond the numbers and look more for the connection. And I'm a firm believer too that like if we're doing a good job at SEO and also at social and all the other places that we need to be, we should see that brand lift, right? Through direct traffic, through branded organic search. But we need to look, beyond the, point A to point B. And user journeys are not linear, and we know that. The other thing I'm like kind of concerned about in the world of SEO is I think for the longest time, we've all relied on this idea that we put out content, we get visitors to our website, we can then cookie them and have them come back to the site to do whatever we want them to do via advertising channels. And what most people don't realize is that that's gone. Like that's ending with the full deprecation of third-party cookies later this year. And so there's just so much. Sorry, I feel like I'm just like babbling on about this and that, but I really think that our industry really has to look inward. We really have to think about quality. I think it's going to be harder and harder to monetize websites that aren't cream of the crop. I think people are going to get more without cookies and being able to like follow individuals, right? It used to be you could put an ad on a crappy site And because I maybe looked at this thing over here and then I went to this crappy site, I'm showing the ad again. But as advertisers get more sophisticated, they're going to start to shut down these crappy sites because there is no following Jen Boland on the internet. It's instead I need to be spending money to do placements on, sites that are higher authority, higher brand, and I hate to use the word authority, but let's be honest, there's something to it. So yeah, there's just so much. Sorry, I wish I had all the answers, but I clearly don't.
Well, that's the beauty about the industry. No one has the answers, and we're all, for the past 20 odd years, we've just been figuring it out as we go along. Some things work for some instances, some things don't in the same instance, and it's just working out what the best thing is for your specific relatable scenario.
Yeah.
And I think that's for me, that's one of the most exciting things. And just because something works over here doesn't mean it's going to work over here. And I've always been very much aligned with the business side of it, and I think that I think that moving forward, that connection with the business, that connection with the people within the business and their skill sets and their knowledge and everything, and their understanding of their customers. Because for me, when you're going for, looking at measurement, it's not just numbers, the real people here. And I think we need to start understanding these real people instead of just numbers. And from your perspective, do you see that's the way the industry needs to go?
I mean, without that user satisfaction data, I just don't know how you're going to know if your content is truly effective. I mean, you could, and this is again only going to really work for your highest end organization. You could do like a lot of pre-flight testing of content before it goes out. But let's be honest, how many people is that really realistic for? For most of us, at best, we're launching content and then coming back and looking at it and, looking for SEO opportunities, maybe thinking about re-promoting something, but we're not thinking about that content a lot of times past the point of publishing. And, I just think quality, more is less, connecting with people. I think we have to do more user interviews in order to even write better content. A lot of times, I think the expert in the field is obviously not the best writer. And so pairing that person with a really strong writer to be able to get their story out, or they just don't have time, right? They're an expert. Their job is to do X, Y, and Z. Their job is not to write an article for the website. So, hey, can I get on your calendar for, 30 minutes and ask you some questions and then go from there and get an article written. But again, it's about finding new ideas, new ways of thinking about things, and then really just connecting with users, because I don't know how we're going to get through the noise of all this AI generated content if we don't think more deeply about how we're connecting with users.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, that's the whole purpose of content. No, I mean,
except we forgot. Don't you feel like? I mean, look, I'm going to be the first person to tell you that I have definitely gotten excited about getting huge increases in rankings and huge increases in people visiting to a site. And granted, it's a little tougher in my industry because a lot of times there is no revenue number to look at. But, I mean, the client's paying me to get them more traffic and I'm getting them more traffic. But sometimes in the back of my mind, I know I didn't get them quality traffic. And, that's frustrating, but it's hard because, right, sometimes like you're measured by not the right measurement, like not the right KPI.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks ago I was speaking to a business and they said, well, I want to get so much traffic. I said, why? Because that'll drive us more inquiries. I said, but will it? Said, yeah, everyone said it does. And I think, well, it's not about the amount, it's about, well, if you was generating 10 times the traffic now, but only 1% was your target audience that you're actually going to do business with, what's the point?
Exactly. I mean, the other thing, and again, these are non-SEOs, but like people who are in the writing industry, one, this is going to sound really terrible. I think writers tend to be so quote unquote creative that they tend to hate data. And they're the first people that actually need to be looking at this data. Second, I think just looking at Search Console data, like keywords that a specific page ranks for, can be so informative, not just for finding opportunities for, for improvement, but also like looking at those keywords. Do they even make sense for your audience? I mean, sometimes you just quickly look at the keywords that you're ranking for and you realize that's not even my audience. And so, I think the problem is just that like, one, SEOs, we can't touch every single piece of content that's out there. So we need to be kind of teaching our teams and the people who are doing some of the writing how to fish, right? Like we need to be teaching them how to analyze their own data, how to like look for ideas, how to think about, different things. So yeah, I mean, it's all about like, connecting with the user. And one thing I worry about a lot of SEOs in the space, especially SEOs who do writing, is are we even the right people to be doing that writing? We definitely can write for keywords in a lot of cases, but do we know enough about these users to form that deep connection? And I don't know that we always do. And I mean, I certainly don't have the depth of topic knowledge that my clients have. And so again, experts and, teasing that information out in a way that really connects with people.
Yeah, I think writing is definitely a skill. I mean, I can write on things I know about, but you give me a topic to write about that I haven't got a clue, and it'd be garbage.
Right, you're
I'm
just going to
mixing.
regurgitate what's already there.
Because
Yeah.
I can't add value to something unless somebody gives me that added value. And I don't think it would actually be right. And that's why, I work with writers on things that can do that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But going back to the content measurement side of it, what are the top 3 things that you can look for to say this content is working?
Yeah. So, working for the organization, I would definitely say assisted conversions. And in Google Analytics, in the Explore report, people don't realize there's this pretty cool little funnel report that allows you to set your goal and or goals and then see if that page was viewed by the user before they did a goal. I mean, what a great way to see, like, is this page doing things that are effective on our website? I would say that's my number one. You can also just get to that data like through segments, like did they look at the page and convert kind of thing. Two, I mean, I think user satisfaction. I think every single website on like their content pages needs to be asking users for feedback. You need to be like, thumbs up, thumbs down, stars, whatever. You need to be asking people to rate your content because otherwise you really don't know. And collecting open-ended feedback, right? Like maybe you're missing a big point, or maybe people are just like, this page did nothing for me, and might be harsh, but like, why do, like, if you have content that's doing nothing for your users, it is not helping your brand. So it's time to get rid of it or fix it. And then, the last piece I really think is looking at those search terms, just because like that gives you so much insight into, like the soul of your users in terms of like especially looking at the longer tail searches and understanding what are people really looking for and how well do I think I'm meeting their needs. And look, there's only one number one spot, even let's say you rank 1.2, 1.5. So even if you can rank in the top 10 for these particular phrases, even if you've got a bigger player who's outranking you or players who are outranking you, if you're at least doing well in terms of position for those search terms, you can be pretty confident that you're meeting some of those needs. So I think those are like my top three things.
Yeah. Do you think that we should stop focusing on rankings and where something's ranking and look at how much traffic it's generating instead?
I mean, I think because I'm actually an analyst at heart who also does SEO, one of my big constructs in analytics is this idea of paired metrics. So fine, I think it's great to look at rankings and use it as a metric, but then that ranking needs to be paired with something else. And in my mind, that's probably assisted conversions because again, I can rank really well for some random search term that may not be relevant. Is that useful? Probably not. But I do think that rankings to some extent are still useful to look at. Because even though Google, and I think we're learning this, I think we all sort of thought that Google was sort of like reading our pages and kind of like assigning some sort of quality score to them. I mean, I really thought that that's kind of like what BERT was doing. But it turns out that really they're just using that user behavior data of like click and then how long did they dwell and go back and what did they do when they went back to the search results page. Because I think in that lawsuit, like Google had to testify how things worked and we knew there was a patent that said that, but now we actually know that that's how it works. So I do think using those rankings as like a quick and dirty, like quality control, and maybe your website, you have some big players and you're never going to be in the top three. But, for you, if a 5 or a 7 is a really good ranking, then yeah, you should be striving to bring as much stuff kind of into what your realistic ranking goals are.
Yeah.
But only important topics and keywords. Again, pairing that with people who come in on these concepts, do they eventually do the thing that you want them to do?
Now, that is the key. It's understanding, well, what do you want the people to do once they get to the page? What's the purpose of this page? And I think with the measurement side of it, I think a lot of the industry, I mean, some do, but a lot of the industry don't sort of really study that side of it.
I know. In my dream world, people would actually capture, they probably don't want to capture it in Google Analytics. Well, they could push it in. They probably don't want to capture it on a page necessarily, although you could have like 10 purposes and you could code them in some way, shape, or form, right? But wouldn't it be great if every piece of content truly did have a purpose? Like, I mean, yeah, like that is every single piece of content needs a purpose. Like, why are you producing content? But here's the reality. I've also worked for a major health publisher for about 6, 7 months. And it was all about page views because they just needed to show ads. And, you know, it didn't matter what those keywords were, they didn't care. I mean, that sounds really harsh. But it really was about pumping the number and nothing else. And, you know, my mind, and it ultimately hurt them in the end. They've actually since really bounced back, but it's taken years and a lot of change management internally to do that. But you know, it's amazing how, you know, few people take the time to say, like, what is the purpose of the page? What do I want people to do? And again, this is why I love Ari Holland's core model, because it is so fundamental to the idea of that you have to meet user needs. You have to think about people, how people are getting to the page. You have to think about where they're going next and what you want them to do next. And to do that, the page has to have a purpose. And so, yeah, I wish almost everybody would really adopt that model into their writing, because I think, one, it would make better content, but two, you would just get so much better performance out of your content if you were thinking about things like that.
Yeah. I was going to say that I think a lot of it comes down to people's individual KPIs as well. You know, like you said, you know, that team were just interested in page views. That was their KPI that they'd been set. So they're going to do whatever it takes to get them page views. You know, obviously other businesses, well, they say, well, it don't matter what you're ranking me for, unless the phone is ringing, then it's pointless.
Right.
You know, so it's all on an individual basis, you know, and especially in the industry, you know, itself. And I think this is where the measurement side of it comes in, and what you're actually measuring. Because obviously different businesses have different goals, objectives, and KPIs on what you measure success by.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is the oldest like management saying? That which gets measured gets managed, right? And that there's a lot of who really said that questions in the world, but you know, the reality is true is that, like, if you can measure something, you're at least looking at it. Even if that KPI isn't quite right, it does at least help you focus your attention on what is important and what you need to be doing. Now, again, I would love if everybody had, you know, like I said, the two KPIs of user satisfaction and, you know, organizational goals. But not everybody, certainly websites that are showing ads are not going to be thinking about that. Although they should be, because I really think a lot of these ad-driven publishers, smaller ones, are really going to be in for a world of hurt come full deprecation of third-party cookies. I don't think they see it coming. They're going to be hit by that and LLMs, and it's just going to be this like massive industry shift. I mean, I could truly see millions of small websites just kind of, I don't know that they'll go under, but they'll just languish because there'll be no revenue.
Yeah, but I'm going to say that people shouldn't just silo organic anyway for a business. You know, organic is a part of the things, because the ultimate goal is to get your brand in front of wherever your audience are, no matter what you hang out.
Well, I have like two great examples. So, you know, the company Winter, he does, I'm gonna mess up his name, but Papalage, he's started several companies, but his latest company is called Winter, and it's all about audience, like surveying and research. And then Rand Fishkin with his new tool, Sparkturo, he's really thinking about it from a where is my audience standpoint. And I think, like, you've got Pep over here really talking about what messages resonate and what are the things I need to be talking about. And then you have Rand over here talking about, all right, I know who my people are. I need to find them so I can get in front of them. And I really think that is where we're going to be going, or I hope that we're going with like this quality, very structured, very focused messaging paired with my people are here, whether it's social, whether it's, UX people who are reading Smashing magazine, like getting in front of people where they are, to help introduce them to your brand or your topic. And I mean, I also think, and I know this, look, I mean, I'm this tiny little business, that's growing from scratch. Like in my own search results, right? When I see that I've been active on social media, the brand searches for Satisfyly increase significantly. If I don't talk about myself, I don't talk about Satisfyly, I get no brand searches. So a lot of times too, we need to be telling people about the thing and, even just like introducing the idea of a concept that then people can search about and sort of find you. Because not everybody knows. And again, like this audience research stuff, I mean, I know that Rand didn't invent it, but he sure did put it on a lot more people's radars than previously. And he did that through social media. And frankly, he's brilliant at it. And, like I definitely look up to him in terms of how he's done things.
Yeah, it's what is achieved is truly remarkable because he came on this podcast and we talked about Spartoro and all the audience research while he was still under NDAs on the SEO side. And we went into depth in everything. And once you start to understand how it all pieces together, it just makes obvious sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he and I have bantered a little bit on Twitter and LinkedIn, and because because I work with nonprofits and associations, I hate to say it, but these people are technologically behind the times. They have no idea of what's coming with the loss of third-party cookies. They're really in the dark about it. They're not thinking about it. It's not necessarily their fault because these people are all underpaid and overworked and they're on hamster wheels and they never have time to take a pause and think about the future. But yeah, I think Rand has really positioned himself, especially with the version 2, which I haven't had a chance to try yet, but I don't think I've gotten off the wait list. But I mean, the way he's thinking about finding the people and then getting your message in front of them, I think is going to be really critical. And then search is going to become more about somebody's already familiar with your brand, and now they're doing the research to narrow down who they want to use to solve X problem. And again, you still have to be out there with, some brand stuff to even be considered, right? Like you have to be top of mind, or you have to write some fabulous content that convinces people why your tool or your product is maybe better than the leading product. Or if you're the leading product, you still need to be telling people why people should still choose you over maybe some less expensive products or whatever. But again, purpose. Everything has to have a purpose. And without that, like, I mean, I close my eyes and I just see all of this like garbage web. It's a cesspool. And I'm sure you follow Lily Ray on Twitter, and she's just so fabulous, and especially with how she just finds all the cess. She finds the sewage of the web and is just constantly showing us like how bad it is. Not just how bad it is from a Google perspective, but just like how much garbage is out there.
Yeah, it's and I think the industry is getting frustrated because this garbage is actually generating a lot of exposure organically.
Oh, it is. It is. And I mean, what was it? House Beautiful. Who wrote the article last week on there basically it was like a dig at like Wirecutter and CNET and all these big brands who were writing about things that are not core to their industry, and how they were always beating them in SEO, even though they didn't even test the products and this and that. I mean, it was a really great article, but it was just like a reminder of actually how unsophisticated the Google algorithm is. And I think most of us, I truly thought, especially with Bert, I really thought it was consuming content, and it was like actually trying to derive whether or not there was truth. But I'm now coming to think it really is a little bit more backlink driven than maybe I wanted to ever believe.
Yeah, I think all I'll say on that is the PR team within Google have done a good job over the years,
Until
especially
now.
the PR team that's, been talking to the industry. And I think things of it, I think the machine just doesn't know how to decipher things. All this talk about parasite SEO and all this, but I mean, really don't know what Google's going to do about it, because what do you do? Penalize the whole brand that's been around for donkey's years? I mean, I really don't understand what's going to happen. And I think it's just a waiting game for us all to decipher what changes happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that tech will maybe start to solve the problem. I think search is going to get more expensive, not just because of the processing power due to generating the LLM generated search results, but also I do think that Google is going to have to start doing more like machine learning within the actual content of the page to figure out like derived value. Like they're almost going to need, well, one, we have this huge like misinformation problem happening, and I could go on about that forever too. But like, how like if 10 people come out with the same article and it's like NIH and the National Health System and maybe it's Healthline, at least there's some like conglomeration or like pointing towards truth. But I just I don't know. I don't know how you get the garbage out, and Google has to make a place for new sites. I know people say that they launch a new site and they see a temporary bump where Google's indexing their content, and then they're not indexing their content. So, I do think they're going to get even more choosy about what content they index, which is frankly another quality factor you can look at. Is Google indexing your content, or that discovered but not indexed? That to me is a huge sign that Google is like, this is worthless content, and you should do something about it.
Yeah. So now, user and content measurement, over the years, when you have been looking at these measurements, has there been any wow factor?
I mean, has there been any wow factor? I mean, I will say I was doing a writing workshop with a client where we were introducing the idea of content measurement, and we were introducing the idea of content optimization to them. And we looked at a handful of pages and we looked at the data, and this client definitely said, yeah, this isn't our audience. Yeah, I don't know why we even have this page. Yeah, this doesn't even make sense. So that is, yeah, I've definitely had that. On the flip side, I've had clients who've looked at the exact same data as me and don't come to the same conclusions that I come to. And then they're just like, well, how did you get there? And I'm like, well, I thought a little bit about the world, and I looked at your data, and I know about your goals because I've been working with you for 5 years, and I'm thinking. And so that's the part that you can't always teach, is like how to look at that data and understand like really what it means, and what you should do about it, right? In this case, this was a voting rights organization. And it was so clear to me, they ranked so high for like the Dobbs decision, the Brew and Guns decision. They ranked for a handful of other terms. And I'm like, people need to know how voting rights connect to these decisions. Nowhere on your website do you explain how these connections are made. You in like the redistricting and the census, and like you have all this content, but you don't make any of the connections between voting rights, those local elections, and what it all means. And just there, when I left the agency, obviously I lost them as a client, but there's just like so much opportunity for them. And but people don't always see it. And I don't know, I think that's sort of what makes us a little magical about SEOs. I think we generally have a little bit weird brains. I myself, I've not been formally diagnosed with ADHD, but it completely makes sense with how my brain works and why I need to do work like SEO that is very multifaceted and brings in lots of different things. To keep my brain happy. I still think content needs a purpose, but I'm not sure that every person or every writer is going to be able to like put their finger on what that purpose should be and think about like the big picture and how that piece of content can move things forward. But hopefully there's somebody else in the organization who's also looking at the data and is thinking about those things.
Yeah. Do you think then, with the whole conversion aspect and the purpose of content and all that side of it, do you think that we need to start focusing more on, I'm not going to say conversational content, because I'm not even going to go there, but more scenarios, more stories, more real life experiences?
Yeah, I do. But here's the problem with the real life experiences. No one's searching for that. And I know it sounds odd when I say that. But the reality is, when I've had clients who have had that kind of content on their website and I go and I look at it, it doesn't see the light of day. And I don't know how we reconcile that. So I feel like there has to be this blend of the facts. And like, this sounds dumb, but like I have an idea for a client and it's like, hey, I want you to lead with like a 1 to 2 paragraph summary of what this entire article is about. Then I want you to tell a personal story. And then I want all of the clinical garbage below that. Like, that is a test that I have proposed to them. I was like, I want to try this. I think you have to have that clinical garbage to rank, but I think people actually want that story. And that short summary, helps you and that short summary also needs to have a ton of empathy, right? Like, if you're looking for, you have this symptom, so you think you have this disease, you want some reassurance, especially if they're searching for like the earlier stage of the disease. And then telling a story about how somebody was able to do X, Y, and Z and make their life better. And maybe they never even get to the clinical stuff at the bottom. But if you don't have it, I know for a fact, especially with health content, you have 0 chance of being in the search results.
Do you know what? Structuring the page to give people what they want as soon as possible is something that's totally missed by so many people out there. It's like, you go to a page and you're scrolling for 10 days before you find what you need to know.
You're like, what headlight size do I need for my car? And the first thing you read is, what is a car? But I mean, I can raise my hand and say I've helped clients create content like that because it works. I've done it. I am guilty as charged. I'm a little bit embarrassed by myself now, but also like, it worked. And it was the only thing that worked for a really long time. And, yes, I think, honestly, I do think we're going to have this shift, and maybe it'll happen slowly, where we can go from taking this clinical skyscraper, kind of fluffy, everything you ever needed to know about that topic, and maybe it is just stuck at the bottom of the page, and everything else is what people would actually want to know. I don't know. But I think, and I had a big client call yesterday, and I was like super honest with them. I was like, so much is changing in SEO. I have tons of ideas. I actually don't know which of these ideas is going to work. And we need to do some testing. And, testing is hard. So for them, I'm recommending that we do, like paired match tests where we like take 5 pages and then we find 5 similarly performing pages, and then we change the thing on the 5 pages and don't change it on the other 5 pages, and then look at it over time. Because I do know that there's sophisticated SEO testing software out there. This is for a nonprofit, and I assure you they don't have the budget for it. So even just thinking through, like, how do we do more testing? I think testing is going to become so critical as all of these shifts happen before us. And right, do we think that there's an algorithm update brewing? I think people said yesterday there's pretty good bit of turbulence the last couple of days.
I don't know. I think people have been saying there's turbulence for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But like yesterday, I was talking to a client, and I said, okay, what's the purpose? They need sign-ups for XYZ over here. And this content over here is generating traffic. It's doing well. I said, there's something missing in the middle, because there's something missing there, and they're not getting from over here to over here because they need to know something else which is missing in the middle. And whether you want to call it a sales funnel or whatever people want to call it, I do think that listing all your content in the order of driving them, what do they need to know in order to make an informed decision to get to the next stage? And I think a lot of it, especially when I've been measuring the activity on sites and measuring content, they do a great job of driving people in, but then what? They're stuck in this loop because all they're doing is linking all this informational content together round and round, and people are going round in circles, not getting to where they need to be. And when
they do want to drive them to where they need to be, they do some very ad-like looking CTA that people then ignore because they have banner blindness.
Well, anyway.
In some cases.
Yeah. Now, is there anything that we haven't spoken about yet you really think that the audience needs to understand or know about?
I think, we sort of hit the nail on the head with our bantering back and forth about just every page having a purpose. I think if you only do one thing, is you ask yourself, what is the purpose of this page? And maybe you go a step further and you say, how might I measure that? And, really just driving home, your page has to have a purpose. And if it's not fulfilling the purpose, is there even a point of having that page?
Yeah. Now, just to finalize, what makes you personally so excited about the user and content measurement side of things?
Well, yeah, I can tell you the answer to that. So, the agency I work for, we built websites. And as the analyst, I would have to go back and measure the performance of the website after it launched. We built beautiful websites, but they almost always fail to perform. And if you follow conversion rate experts at all, they tell tons of stories about the exact same thing. And it's because nobody thought about the content. And that is like my big thing is ultimately helping people do content first redesigns. I'm actually working on a content audit tool that helps align the content with the content strategy for a redesign, using a lot of the things from the Content Insights app and satisfaction scores and so forth. But that's what makes me excited is, if I can help a client like rewrite, and sometimes it really only is 10, 20, 40 pages out of like 10,000, and help them truly make an outstanding difference in their website performance in terms of conversion and traffic, then I've done my job. And yeah, that makes me really excited. It's just when I can see those results and I know that I have delivered for that client.
Wonderful. And on that note, what sort of conversations would you like to have with people, and where can they find you?
Well, I would love to talk about Satisfyly because it's a start, inexpensive way to get content feedback directly into Google Analytics, as well as then using the Content Insight app. And anybody who contacts me via this podcast, just raise your hand and said you saw me with Mark. You'll get the Content Insights app for free. So I'm definitely offering that. And you can find me on Twitter at Jen Boland, and also LinkedIn at Jen Boland, or look for Satisfyly, Satisfyly. So it's all about creating satisfying content.
Wonderful. And on that note, many, many thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It was super fun.